As we all know, there's a national holiday in February that everybody cares about. And that is, of course, February 4th, the premiere of Jackass Forever. Only in theaters. This is not sponsored, by the way. I realized that started to sound like an ad.
Johnny Knoxville looking good.
I know.
He looks good.
Oof, Johnny Knoxville with gray hair.
Yeah. I guess that's my thing, I guess.
So, we were talking about it a little bit. We had our little...
We saw an ad. Was it when we were watching RuPaul?
Yeah, it was while we were watching RuPaul. By the way, this season's really good.
It's good. All the bad people are just...
Yeah, they're weeding out the chaff pretty quickly, which they don't normally do.
I liked Alyssa. She was sweet, but come on.
So we're watching that. Jackass Forever ad comes on only in theaters February 4th.
You said, oh, I realized why they made the V and Forever a heart. Because a lot of people are going to go see that on Valentine's Day.
Yeah. So I say that can be our date. It'll be fun.
And I said, no, we can't do that. It's February 4th. It's only in theaters on February 4th.
And I was like, what about this? Don't you understand? The premiere date is February 4th. It's not. It's not. They don't wide release a movie for a single day.
But I was legitimately not understanding that. I was interpreting only in theaters February 4th on that single day.
Mm-hmm.
And so I did not think this would be possible. I was like, no, they can't. It comes off February 4th.
Only a single day. They're only interested in making money on one random day in February that isn't Valentine's Day.
It's called Jackass Forever.
So
and by forever, we mean one single day on February 4th.
Jackass for one day.
Jackass for one day. That is February 4th, 2022.
Tighten your buttholes. It's time for Packed. I am the P, Peter Coffin, the lovely Miss Astronaut Cowboy Doctor. Right here is the ACD. Together we are packed. Don't miss an episode. Like, comment, subscribe. Leave us a glowing review on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or whatever weird thing you use. We are a 5-star podcast.
Not 3, not 4, 5. I'm a 5-star man.
Join our Discord at discord.packedpod.com. We hang out there all the time. We chat. We do some other fun stuff that you can access specifically by becoming a patron. There's movie night, reading group, exclusive content, and you see some content before everyone else. So help us keep the lights on by becoming a patron at patreon.com/packedpod. That's PACDPOD. We've also got fantastic Packed merch. Finally, tell your friends. And I cannot overstate this enough. We rely so big on word of mouth. And I'm not joking about that. As much as it's fun to do that, we really, really rely on word of mouth. We don't have an advertising budget. We don't have anybody backing us. It's just us talking to microphones and posting it.
This isn't like a corporation or like a market demographic where your consumption means nothing. We actually do need
we need advocacy.
We need
on
advocacy.
Our behalf.
We need mutual aid.
Yeah.
Not sexual.
We stream 7 p.m. Eastern every Sunday. Thank you very much for tuning in. The Ukraine.
The
Ukraine. Let's call the whole thing off. So people get all pissy about when you say the Ukraine. Why? Because they respect neo-Nazi voices. That's why.
At the risk of being potentially reductive, that is the accepted vernacular for referring to Ukraine as a nation. However, the reason why people get all pissy about it calling the Ukraine is because that is what it was referred to in the Soviet Union.
Yeah.
And the Ukrainian state, which is not dissociated from Nazis.
It's not particularly unfriendly towards Nazis. let's just say.
It doesn't like that and likes to be called Ukraine.
So just keep that in mind. Respect neo-Nazi voices.
Yeah.
It's Ukraine, not the Ukraine.
That's it. That's the whole episode. Yeah. Hashtag not all Nazis. But anyway.
I'm going to say the Ukraine.
Okay. I'm going to say the N-word.
No. Stop.
Neo-Nazi is a slur. It's post-Hitlerism.
Yeah. The Ukraine, referring to the state as Ukraine, is in recognition of its independence, free from the evil grips of communism.
Yeah. If you are an American and you're correcting me on whether I say Ukraine or the Ukraine, you want to know where you got that ideology? You didn't get it from the Ukrainian people. You didn't get it from your neighbor who's from the Ukraine. You got it from the imperialist state. So shut up.
So that's actually not the whole thing that we're going to talk about.
No.
We're going to talk about recent history of Ukraine, what's going on currently between Ukraine and Russia, and how the United States is involved in and seeking to benefit from that. Well, let's give an overview of what is presently happening. The United States, as is always our mission as a state. I was going to be sarcastic with that and say which we vehemently support as patriotic socialists, but I don't want to confuse people.
Yeah, let's not do that.
Just to fucking be clear. Just to be clear, we do not fucking support the United States state.
Oddly enough, to people who seem to support it.
Seem to do that. Like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, for example. I don't understand how you could even like wax pretend leftists by supporting this. Even, and we'll talk about this, even fucking Jacobin is criticizing this.
And we will talk about why we think they're doing it.
But the United States is once again extremely committed to spreading democracy.
Yeah.
Russia currently has troops within its borders on the Ukrainian border because they're gonna invade Ukraine.
Yeah. because they're bloodthirsty Slavs.
Anyway, the real reason that there are Russian troops at the Ukrainian border, again, within Russia's own borders, is because they have reason to believe that NATO, the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, and the 27 countries a party to it, of which the U.S. is obviously a part of, the leading part of, are going to expand.
Yes, and have been expanding for years throughout the Eastern Bloc.
They are cultivating mass, yeah.
Yeah. Now, they actually regard Ukraine as an aspirant joining state. It's not as though Russia is like just silly about worrying about that. It is a legitimate threat. I have heard NPR talking about how they're sure that they're going to invade and how Joe Biden is trying to negotiate and how the Russians just won't compromise while the US and NATO refuse to guarantee to Russia that Ukraine will not be joining NATO, which is, to be clear, what this is all about.
Yeah.
You won't hear that on NPR, though. They don't talk about that.
Oh, I didn't get to listen to the NPR too.
I listen to NPR talk about it, and holy shit, wow. Don't listen to NPR. I do it to find out what they're saying, and oh my God. They're so bad. They're so bad.
Yeah, I make Peter do all that shit, and they make me listen to it if we're going to do an episode on it, but we don't. So, back in 1999, or as early as 1999, NATO continued to expand eastward into Eurasia, expanding into Poland, expanding in the Czech Republic. Remember, NATO was developed in 1947, right after World War II, to kind of foster an agreement that was intended to help stave off the Cold War. This expansion has always sort of had this undercurrent with the United States as a leading force of spreading democracy. It has these origins in the Cold War of fighting communism and fighting for the sovereignty of these states.
And to be clear, a lot of that NATO expansion was accompanied by color revolutions in the states in the Eastern Bloc.
Exactly. Yeah. In Estonia, Lithuania, Latvia, the Czech Republic, Poland. This NATO expansion was to secure the democracy of these places, some of which are
former communist republics that were Eastern Bloc, former USSR republics. Like they had either a communist or a communist sympathetic government, and NATO went in and reformed them.
Yeah. So their goal is similar in Ukraine, or their stated goal is similar in Ukraine, with, of course, fossil fuel interests underpinning that involvement. Oh boy, does that get interesting with the spreading of democracy to Ukraine and how that context fits in.
Seems like a lot of democracy spreading happens around oil, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Let's talk about the Rand Corporation for a moment, shall we?
Let's talk about the Rand Corporation.
So the Rand Corporation was started in 1945 as Project Rand by the Douglas Aircraft Company to offer research and analysis for the U.S. Air Force. Now, over the following years, it was spun off into its own entity, which was taken on and funded by the U.S. Air Force as the Rand Corporation. This is an independent think tank now that develops policy that influences U.S. military operations and the State Department. So, in the year 2000...
Before that fateful day... I'm sorry. I have to say this now in public, so I have the opportunity to say it. Fucking Wordle.
Yeah.
Every time I see a little Wordle image, I think of September 11th.
Because that's what it looks like.
Well, that's what it looks like, and also I never forget. That's what Earth, Wind, and Fire were talking about the whole time.
Oh, yeah?
No,
Do you remember?
It was 10 days later.
So the Rand Corporation put out this analysis called Ukraine and the Caspian, an opportunity for the United States. And it is essentially an analysis talking about varying pipelines, one which was proposed to be constructed that started in Kazakhstan, interestingly enough. Also, we had a failed color revolution there recently. This route was called the Baku-Kayhan route. I don't think that that's the proper way to pronounce it, but that's all right. And essentially, it was a non-cost-effective, probably politically impossible.
And if not impossible, extremely inefficient and long.
Yeah, yes. It was a natural gas pipeline that was not going to be something that the Rand Corporation believed could be done. Happily, there's another alternative. For years, Ukraine has advocated a route through Azerbaijan and Georgia over the Black Sea and through Ukraine to Poland. Although this proposal has been all but ignored in Washington, it has real potential. Most of the necessary pipeline already exists. Essentially, the proposal was to bypass Russia, which, as we know, is not in Russia's interests. This proposal also cost significantly less. The Baku-Kayhan route cost between $2.5 to $4 billion, whereas this route, because it utilized so much already constructed pipeline, would cost a small fraction of $4 billion. Much easier route, cuts out Russia.
Gives Ukraine viable options for cultivating its own energy resources.
One of the primary hills to get over with this was a reform of the financial system in Ukraine, which ain't that the thing. Apparently investors didn't want to put lots of money in Ukraine in the 90s because their financial system needed reform. What's that sound like to you? That sounds like imperialism. It's literally like without using the word imperialism, they're saying our investors need us to do imperialism in Ukraine. Financial monopolies, taking control of other markets. That's imperialism.
I think that's actually a really good concrete example of how imperialism works as an economic system with the socio-political ramifications that we tend to think of when we talk about imperialism, because we are trained to think of imperialism as country doing wars.
Yeah.
That's how those things are inextricably connected together. By choosing to invest in that pipeline at this time, which is really important for the time within which this was written after, the Gulf War and then coming up on the Iraq War.
They wanted to reduce dependence on Iran.
That didn't work.
Yeah. Well, more or less, it's a putting your eggs in more than one basket situation where you're going to have to keep taking oil out of the Middle East. They'd already done one war there. Might as well. But when this didn't pan out immediately, they did more wars in the Middle East. And in order to get this shit right here to pan out, the U.S. funded a color revolution in Ukraine. In 2004, the Orange Revolution. The U.S. spent more than $35 million in 2004 alone, which is when the Orange Revolution took place. But from 1991 on, the U.S. has spent over $5 billion attempting to spread democracy to Ukraine. Now, what does this mean exactly? Again, this is talking about color revolutions. We went into more depth on this in our Cuba episode, which was about...
We gave a good overview of Cuban history, and then in that process of color revolutions substantiated by the United States.
Yeah. But just to quickly go over some of the things of color revolutions, I really like referencing this paper from 2014 entitled Color Revolutions, Democratization, Hidden Influence, or Warfare. The way this paper characterizes criticism of color revolutions is they are seen as a Western tool for broadening and strengthening global influence. They use a unifying ideology of democracy and spreading democracy, which is one that doesn't really hold up. This uses Iraq as evidence that when the U.S. is talking about spreading democracy, it's not really talking about spreading democracy.
Well, yeah, we've been spreading democracy since the Monroe Doctrine and Manifest Destiny. And that's what this is a justification for, from even our most progressive Congress people. AOC thinks this is all about democracy as well.
Yes. And did with Cuba. Remember? We brought her up in the Cuba episode.
Did she?
Yeah.
That's fucking crazy. The reason I forget is because there's still people who say that they're communists supporting people like her. And so I think, well, they can't be that flagrant, but they are.
There's a little ideology model here. Very simple one.
It's just, really fun.
It's two circles. The inside circle is interests, and the circle surrounding that circle is ideology. It's just like, it's the simplest possible model, but it's accurate too.
Yeah, no, it's good.
Color revolutions always have this veneer of the people rising up in protest to demand democracy and freedom. Suddenly there's like 100 to 1,000 people who gather and they're saying like, give us democracy, give us freedom. And they're echoing all of these U.S. talking points. And it's because they're funded. There's these intellectuals, there's professional activists, there's NGOs and POs operating in these countries that take all of this money from...
in the same way it happens here.
Yes, absolutely. But anyway, there's funding that comes in from the United States Agency for International Development, that's USAID, the National Endowment for Democracy, that's NED or NED, or the George Soros Open Society Institute, which somebody will say, why are you focusing on George Soros? There's so many other people who also do the same thing. Well, it's because he's one of the primary funding sources for these fucking color revolutions. That's fucking why.
That's what's anti-Semitic, though, not supporting the Nazi paramilitias.
Yeah, exactly.
Ukrainian.
Well, we did that specific episode showing how stupid it is that George Soros is a conspiracy theory. Just George Soros.
As a
Saying George
person.
Soros means you're being anti-Semitic. It's not that there's a ruling capitalist class or financial imperialism going on. It's not there's monopoly capitalism and that it's in decay, possibly in
Just
crisis. None of that
George
stuff.
Soros.
Just George Soros.
Like he's fucking Santa Claus.
Yeah. But we pointed out how stupid that is. And now when I bring it up in arguments, I have people come back to me with, well, yeah, that stuff is happening, but why are we only concentrating on George Soros? I don't know. Maybe because academics who actually study this shit name him and his Open Society Institute alongside USAID and NED as the three main sources of funding for these fucking color revolutions. Maybe that's why.
In the years and the following decade, there's this Russian-Ukrainian sort of tension that has been happening, sort of like cyclic economic blackmailing of one another, where they have to kind of give in to these coercive, suboptimal deals on both sides.
Yeah.
So this is also where it gets funny in the Western media. The Western media appraisal of the situation is Russia not willing to compromise. So in 2013, in November, the elected president of Ukraine, Viktor Yanukovych, was trying to orchestrate an agreement between the European Union, between Ukraine, between Russia, and even the United States and in NATO, and all countries represented in that, to have a solution that worked for everyone in terms of determining sovereignty, satiating the EU, and allowing Ukraine to utilize Russian energy resources like natural gas pipelines, like oil pipelines, petroleum, and Russia economically being able to benefit from that.
Yeah. Well, Russia would be able to sell to Europe through Ukraine. It'd be able to use pipelines through Ukraine, which Ukraine would then also be able to utilize, bringing down energy expense in Ukraine, as well as giving new customers to the Russian oil industry.
Exactly. So the United States looked down upon them and whispered, no. Because they wanted to control Ukraine.
Yeah.
And the natural resources that underpin that. So Putin then offered Ukraine a much better deal to have Russian natural resources for up to a third less, and to have assistance from Russia and paying off those debts, which is a theme that has been going on since pre 9/11. Ukraine, they're so reliant on Russian resources, and Russia in turn is padding their debt further and further, that they're not incentivized to develop their own sources. Yanukovych didn't want to fuck up things for the Ukrainian people, so he accepted Putin's offer. The U.S. didn't like that, and so the real January 6th happened. But it was actually November in 2013. And so there were nationalist right-wingers in Ukraine. They were affiliated with openly fascist organizations, and they were protesting and engaging in all these demonstrations.
They were basically a second color revolution in the country. There was the Orange Revolution in 2004. 2013, the same thing was going on. But the people that the United States was funding and pushing to protest and do the same color revolution playbook were a lot of the time open fascists and neo-Nazis. And when I say fascists, I mean like people who are like, yeah, Nazis.
So those people were demonstrating, and Yanukovych maybe got a little extra spicy.
He got a little hasty.
He came in hot with the police violence, which is not good. And that resulted in an extreme eruption of violence that ended in a coup, and with these groups taking over the Ukrainian government. Yanukovych fled to Russia as, you know, these fascist apologists and right-wing militias, paramilitias, were committed to restoring independent law and order in Ukraine. This was consistent with the interests of the European Union, the interests of NATO, and of course, by proxy, the interests of the United States, who was supporting these militias. And
absolutely.
A long-standing history.
Support, training, and weapons.
Right. Logistical support, tactical support, and economic support. So Russia invaded Crimea.
Yeah, that was what Russia did. Annexation of Crimea.
Yeah, which is not what happened.
No.
It was not an invasion. They tried to close off the peninsula and protect it from a nuclear base that was run by the fascists in the Ukrainian capital.
The neo-Nazis.
And they were already there under the agreement.
Of the Ukrainian government before the fascists took over.
Right, of the Ukrainian government.
So, important piece of information in terms of where we go from here is that 40% or more of Ukraine, their population is 40% or more Russian.
And during this time, with this sort of fascist overtaking of their state, they were banning Russian languages. There was extreme xenophobia in their policies that was discriminating against Russians. So after this happened, the people of Crimea democratically elected to return to the Russian administration.
Specifically, Crimea, I believe, is 80% Russian. And it was something like 85% of Crimea voted.
90%.
So Crimea, obviously, if you're talking about the democratic will of the people, didn't want to be a part of Ukraine.
Right.
They did not want to be associated with the neo-Nazi stuff. They were in a position where they were very vulnerable and they accepted Russia's help. And then it ultimately voted democratically to return to the Russian administration.
And so that brings us 7-8 years later, with Russia having troops at the Ukrainian border within its own confines, and the Western media threatening that there's going to be a Russian invasion and an encroachment on the sovereignty of Ukraine, which is completely contradictory to what's taking place. What's happening is the Russian military is protecting the state as NATO, including the United States and its affiliated countries, continues to expand into Ukraine and into their border.
And this is not to defend Putin or sit here and talk about how great he is, because he's not great. However, neither is Ukraine. It's integrated the Azov Regiment, which is an outwardly fascist neo-Nazi paramilitary group.
Stated goal to bring about the fruition of the white races.
Yes. It is not a place that is all about democracy. And you know what I saw today? I saw an article of LGBT people in Ukraine saying,
oh, I saw that.
Saying, we love our state. We'll fight Russia if they come in here. And that's just outwardly horseshit. Because one, some things are legalized for LGBTQ people in Ukraine. However, legalized is kind of an excuse to say that there is human rights in the country, because they don't provide any fact-oriented education on sexuality or gender in Ukraine. The state outwardly does not allow that to go on.
Yeah.
And what happens is that allows the Ukrainian Orthodox Church to dictate the ideology on LGBTQ people, which is, guess what? That they're dirty, that they're evil, that they spread AIDS. And that's how people generally see them there. So they're not going up and standing on the steps of the Capitol building in Kyiv going, we'll fight for Ukraine if Russia comes. That's bullshit. They're not twerking on the steps, okay? They're not demonstrating. No, this is not a good place for LGBTQ people. Not that Russia is. There's plenty of crap that goes on there. But to act as though they're willing to defend their rights in the Ukraine, they're not doing that. That's not happening.
Let's backtrack a little bit. After that invasion of Crimea, Barack Obama and his administration.
Barack Hussein Obama.
After Crimea democratically seceded from Ukraine, the CIA ground branch of the United States was established under the Obama administration. It was expanded under Donald Trump, and Biden has further augmented the CIA ground branch, which has provided, like we said before, over the past several years, logistical, tactical, and training-based assistance to the Ukraine, where they are training paramilitaries.
Paramilitaries? Aren't those the neo-Nazis?
Well, if you talk to former CIA representatives, they'll say one thing. And if you talk to the current people, they'll say that this isn't happening. But basically, the whole thing is that the former CIA agents and representatives are saying, yes, they are training paramilitaries to be active at the Ukrainian eastern border should Russia invade. They've been very...
Should Russia invade.
Right. They are training for an insurgency. A former CIA official said an insurgency for how to kill Russians. Ukrainians are being trained to do that. Of course, the current intelligence officials are saying this is not the case. This is purely for intelligence purposes.
I don't think CIA does that for anything.
Yeah. And,
while they are the Central Intelligence Agency, their mission is not centrally intelligent.
Well, right. And then what is the purpose of having that intelligence?
Yeah, exactly.
So since the Obama administration developed this, it's been a top priority. And up to the Biden administration, where we have a task force now to see how the CIA can help Ukraine. Should there be a Russian invasion, which, again, Russians are protecting their border as NATO attempts to expand eastward into it, as it's been doing since the 1990s, basically in violation of the terms that had been set forth in 1947 after World War II and prior to not prior to, but like leaning into the Cold War.
So Jacobin released an article which, I mean, in terms of a Jacobin article, is pretty ballsy on a lot of these points. Yeah. But that's in terms of a Jacobin article.
So not
particularly ballsy. They're very wishy-washy about it. I'm more than comfortable saying the CIA is training neo-Nazis. They are not. They're saying the CIA, because of the context we understand in this country, is possibly training neo-Nazis. They do some good things in this article. The author, Branko Marcetic, I don't know anything about him. He may be trying to worm some real shit into Jacobin.
Behind his power level.
We don't know. I don't want to make any assertions about him individually, but I do want to say that there's two aspects I want to talk about here. The first is that I think that they are doing an article on this to try to rebuild some credibility from basically bolstering both AOC and Biden.
Yeah,
in the past
fucking
year.
Jesus.
Yeah,
Biden.
That fucking Jesus Joe Biden cover. That
was totally satirical.
It was satire, guys. Don't you understand? It's satire. No, it's not satire. You're not you're going to be on a newsstand next to Newsweek, which is doing the same thing, but it's not satire. And the same people are going to buy both of them.
Yeah.
It's not satire. So I think they're kind of laundering themselves a little bit here by allowing this in here. And Branko Marcetic might be attempting to take advantage of that. But the number of times that they say literal fascists.
Yeah, they say that 3 times.
Couple of important things in this article, though. This was something that was actually not in any other article that we looked at, which was that the U.S. alliance with Nazi-infected Ukraine has already proven awkward for the president. But every year since the coup, so since 2014, when the government that exists now established itself entirely, The United States is one of two countries, the other being Ukraine itself, which voted against the UN draft resolution to combat glorification of Nazism, neo-Nazism, and other practices that contribute to fueling contemporary forms of racism. The U.S. and Ukraine are the two countries, and obviously it needs a unanimous vote to pass and to do those things, but the only two countries that voted against the glorification of Nazism and neo-Nazism. That's an awkward thing for the United States to do when the primary boogeyman
Throughout the entire Trump administration and the years leading up to it, there was very much a real issue. I think a lot of times it was created to be this larger boogeyman in comparison to like what the ruling class does in perpetuating white supremacy, and got us focused on these very sporadic, disorganized, obviously terrible, at the same time not really doing a whole lot of damage, hate groups, to detract attention away from the United States state itself and its administration from doing things like voting against this UN resolution.
Yeah. The Biden administration deployed a nearly identical boilerplate explanation for its no vote that Donald Trump had also used, citing the constitutional right for free speech, even for those with repugnant views. That's so funny.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that one works when you're defending neo-Nazis, but not Joe Rogan. Anyway, you have the Biden administration, which sold itself as a solution to the far-right extremism that the previous administration brought on, and as the natural counterweight to stopping something like January 6th from happening again, while continuing and even bolstering the programs to train neo-Nazis in Ukraine to more or less help with NATO expansion in the area, just because this opens up more resources, specifically oil and natural gas, to the United States, and the financial reforms and monopoly capitalism, financial monopolies, etc.
I know. It does really suck that Jacobin didn't push him left.
Yeah, it is.
Damn. Basically, the United States and Western media and all affiliated with NATO are propagating propaganda to make it seem like Russia is going to invade Ukraine, so that they can obfuscate what's actually going on, where NATO is attempting to expand into the Ukraine and into the Russian border, and the Russian state is protecting itself.
Mm-hmm.
Did
Cancel.
I miss anything?
Well, you missed that you need to call it Ukraine.
Oh. Just bleep
I'm not bleeping it out. I'm leaving them all in. I am imitating. I'm imitating the pedantry.
Bleep it. Ukraine.
So, yeah, you don't have to be like pro-Russia or anything, but don't let people repeat this like horse shit to you.
Yeah, the US and NATO, they're spreading democracy.
Yeah.
And that's why they're doing this.
You don't got to stop me. I'm going to Ukraine. And that's it for Pact. Thanks again for watching or listening. I'm Peter. This is Miss Astronaut Cowboy Doctor. To help us out, click like, follow, subscribe, join our Discord, leave us 5-star reviews on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. To support us, become a patron at patreon.com/PactPod. That's PACDPOD. Thanks so much. Come back next week.